I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself when you answer. Have you ever bought something? Not because you needed it, not even because you really wanted it, but because you were stressed, or lonely, or exhausted from a long week, or just numb. And for about 10 minutes after, you felt better. And then the feeling wore off. And then you checked your bank account, and the guilt hit. If that is you, I need you to hear something that most finance channels will never tell you. That is not a willpower problem. That is not a discipline problem. That is not you being irresponsible or careless or bad with money. That is emotional spending. And it is one of the most common and most misunderstood reasons people cannot hold on to their money. My name is Josephine, and this channel exists for people like us, first-gen earners who are doing their best with no map and no manual. So today we're going to talk about emotional spending, what it actually is, why it happens, and how to finally stop letting your feelings run your finances. Let's get into it. Let's start with what emotional spending actually is. Because most people think they know, and most people have it slightly wrong. Emotional spending is not just retail therapy. It is not only the person who maxes out a credit card after a breakup. It is much quieter than that, and much more common. Emotional spending is any time you use money, or the act of spending, to manage how you feel. That is the key phrase, to manage how you feel. It can look like ordering takeout at midnight because you are overwhelmed and cooking feels impossible. Adding things to your online cart when you are bored, even if you never check out. Buying something small after a hard day at work as a reward for surviving it. Impulse buying a course or a book or a gadget because you feel stuck and it feels like progress. None of these feel dramatic in the moment. None of them feel like a crisis. But over time, over weeks and months, they quietly drain your account. And you are left wondering where the money went. Sound familiar? Here is the thing that most personal finance content misses completely. The problem is not the spending. The problem is the feeling underneath the spending. The spending is just a symptom, and you cannot treat a symptom without understanding the root cause. So let's go there. I want to talk about what is actually happening in your brain when you emotionally spend. Because once you understand this, it changes everything. Your brain has one job above all others: to protect you from pain. When you're stressed, anxious, lonely, bored, or overwhelmed, your brain registers that as a threat, and it immediately starts looking for relief. Now, in a perfect world, it would reach for a walk, or a conversation with a friend, or a long sleep. But those things take time and energy that you may not have. Spending is fast. Spending is easy. And spending works, at least in the short term. When you make a purchase, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. That is the same chemical involved in pleasure, reward, and motivation. It gives you a real, physiological sense of relief. Not imagined, actual. So your brain learns something. Feeling bad? Spend something. Feel better. Over and over again until it becomes automatic. And here is where it gets really important for us, first-gen people specifically. Many of us grew up in households where money was scarce and stress was constant, where there was always something to worry about, where treats and purchases were rare enough to feel genuinely special when they happened. So the connection between spending and emotional relief was built early, deep, and strong. This is not a character flaw. This is conditioning. And you can absolutely change it. But first, you have to know what your emotional spending triggers actually are. There are 5 emotional spending triggers I see most often. And I want you to listen for the one, or ones, that sound like you. Trigger 1, stress spending. This is the most common one. You have had a hard day, a hard week, a hard month, and you just need something to take the edge off. So you scroll, you browse, you buy, not because you needed the thing, but because the act of buying it gave you a brief sense of control in a moment where everything else felt out of control. That need for control is real and valid. We just need to find a healthier place to put it. Trigger 2, boredom spending. This one has exploded in the age of one-click shopping. You are not stressed. You are not sad. You are just bored. And scrolling through a shopping app gives your brain just enough stimulation to feel like you are doing something. Until the package arrives, and the excitement lasts about 4 minutes. Boredom spending is especially dangerous because it does not feel like spending. It feels like browsing. Until you check your statement. Trigger 3, celebration spending. Now this one is tricky because it does not feel like a problem at all. You got a raise. You finished a big project. You made it through the week. You deserve a treat. And you do. You absolutely do. But celebration spending becomes a trigger when every win, no matter how small, becomes a reason to spend money you had earmarked for something else. When I deserve this becomes the most expensive sentence in your vocabulary. Trigger 4, comparison spending. You saw it on Instagram, or TikTok, or your colleague walked in with it, and suddenly you needed it, not because it would make your life better, but because having it would make you feel like you belong, like you have arrived, like you are keeping up. This one runs especially deep in communities where visible success matters, where looking like you are doing well is almost as important as actually doing well, and the pressure to project that image can quietly bleed your finances dry. Trigger 5, comfort spending. This is the one nobody talks about. This is spending that comes from grief, or loneliness, or feeling invisible. When something, or someone, has hurt you deeply, and you reach for a purchase the way other people might reach for a drink. Not to celebrate, not because you're bored, but because something inside you is hurting, and you are trying to fill that space with something you can hold. This type of spending deserves the most compassion, because it is telling you something important, something that a shopping cart was never designed to fix. Okay, so now that we understand what emotional spending is and why it happens, let's talk about how to actually interrupt the pattern. And I want to be real with you, this is not about white-knuckling it. It is not about cutting up your credit cards or deleting every shopping app. Willpower alone does not work here, because this is an emotional pattern, not a math problem. What works is building awareness and a pause between the feeling and the purchase. That pause is everything. Step 1. Name the feeling before you spend it. The next time you feel the urge to buy something, before you click, before you tap, before you add to cart, I want you to stop and ask yourself one question. What am I actually feeling right now? Not what do I want to buy? What am I feeling? Am I stressed, lonely, bored, tired, embarrassed, disappointed? Name it, out loud if you can, in your notes app if you cannot. Because the moment you name the emotion, you create distance from it. And in that distance, there is a choice. Step 2, the 48-hour rule. For any non-essential purchase over a certain amount, I recommend $50, but pick a number that works for you. You wait 48 hours before buying it, not to deprive yourself, just to let the emotion that triggered the impulse have time to pass. If you still want it 48 hours later, and it fits your budget, buy it guilt-free. But most of the time, you will check back 2 days later and realize the feeling has faded, and the thing you desperately needed has quietly lost its power. Step 3. Build an emotional first aid kit. This is the one most people skip, and it is the most important. You need a list of things that actually soothe the feelings that trigger your spending. Not productive things, not ambitious things, things that actually make you feel better in the moment. Maybe it is a walk around the block, a phone call to someone who makes you laugh, a specific playlist, a cup of tea and 30 minutes of your favorite show, a journal entry, a nap, a workout, a prayer. Write your list down right now if you can. Keep it somewhere visible. Because when the urge hits, and it will hit, you need to be able to reach for that list before you reach for your phone. Step 4. Create guilt-free spending money. Here is something counterintuitive. One of the most powerful things you can do to reduce emotional spending is to give yourself permission to spend guilt-free on a small, intentional amount every month. Call it your joy fund, your fun money, whatever you want. An amount you set aside specifically to spend on whatever you want. No tracking, no justification, no guilt. It sounds like the opposite of a solution, but what it actually does is remove the emotional charge from spending. When you have a space for it, a designated, budgeted, guilt-free space, spending loses its power as a forbidden comfort, and that means it loses its grip on you. I want to leave you with something. Every single one of these triggers, the stress, the boredom, the comparison, the comfort, every single one of them is pointing to a need that is not being met. A need for rest, a need for connection, a need for validation, a need for peace, and the spending is your way of trying to meet that need with the fastest tool available. The work, the real work, is not learning to spend less. The real work is learning to meet those needs in ways that actually last. That is slower work. That is harder work. but it is the only work that actually changes things. You deserve to feel good without going into debt to feel it, and you are more than capable of building that life. You just needed someone to tell you what was actually going on. Now you know. Here is what I want you to do before this video ends. Pick your trigger, the one from today's list that sounded most like you. Stress, boredom, celebration, comparison, comfort, and write down just one thing you can do instead of spending next time that feeling shows up. Just one. That is your homework. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know which trigger is yours. If this video hit home, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you have not already. Every week, something new just for us. I will see you in the next one.